Sulfonylureas are drugs used in the management of type 2 diabetes. These drugs are separated into two different generations, and in this scene, I'll cover the first generation agents specifically. Now let's get started. Time to check out a young couple's very first selfie. First dates. The panic, the awkward conversations, the growing love. Might as well snap a selfie to remember the moment, right? By the way, the word selfie should help you remember sulfonylureas. You know, it's the sulfonylurea selfie, or the selfie-nulurea. And since this is the couple's first date, you might even call this a couple's first selfie. Taken together, the first selfie should anchor you to this image on the first generation sulfonylureas. And what a great place for a first date. It seems like we were at a carnival or something like that, and this couple took their very first selfie by the entrance. Yep, check out the toll booth up at the front. Yes, you need to buy tickets at the toll booth first before you can go into the park. Coincidentally, the word toll booth helps me remember tolbutamide, one of the important drug names you should remember. It's the tolbutamide toll booth. Pretty great, right? Next, take a look at that container of Clorox wipes next to the toll booth. With so many people going in and out of these gates, the park definitely needs to keep things clean. Furthermore, these Clorox wipes help me remember the name of another first-generation sulfonylurea, chlorpropamide. It's the chlorpropamide Clorox wipes. Now that we've covered all the drug names for the first-generation sulfonylureas, let's talk about their mechanism of action. Wow, I really can't wait to get inside and get some ice cream. Nothing like sharing ice cream to bring two people together, right? Check out the ice cream machine at the back of the image. It looks familiar, doesn't it? That's right, it's the same ice cream machine as the one from our scene on meglitinides. Looks like it's in need of repair or something. Sulfonylureas and meglitinides have pretty much the same mechanism of action, so I'll be referencing that image here. We'll start with a quick physiology review. As you already know, beta cells release insulin in response to high glucose levels. To do this, glucose first enters beta cells and is metabolized to ATP. The ATP next binds to and closes ATP-dependent potassium channels. This leads to beta cell depolarization, which opens voltage-gated calcium channels. This causes an influx of calcium, which causes the fusion of insulin-containing vesicles. In other words, it causes insulin release. And releasing insulin is obviously useful in diabetes. So how do sulfonylureas take advantage of this mechanism? Sulfonylureas enter beta cells and bind and close ATP-dependent potassium channels. This is represented by the banana clogging up the ice cream machine here. A stuck banana for the closing of potassium channels, right? The closed potassium channel leads to depolarization of the beta cell, which is represented by the electrical spark seen here, since depolarization is just a change in voltage, right? Once depolarized, voltage-gated calcium channels in the beta cells open up, which leads to an influx of calcium. As you probably guessed, this is represented by the overabundance of calcium ice cream seen here. And of course, the staff has opened up the machine to figure out what's wrong. In order to repair the machine, we have to expose the insulation that's used to keep the ice cream cold. This is to represent how calcium influx causes increased insulin release through calcium-mediated vesicle fusion. C-peptide is another molecule that is stored in the same vesicle as insulin. So when insulin is released, C-peptide is as well. However, C-peptide levels are only found when endogenous insulin is released, such as when sulfonylureas stimulate insulin release. Just know that insulin levels are increased along with C-peptide in sulfonylurea use, since the insulin released is endogenous, or naturally produced by your body. Oh, darn. Right when everything was going so well, I accidentally knocked over this sack of sugar. Guess it must be another ingredient of this ice cream. By the way, this falling sugar should help you remember that sulfonylureas can cause hypoglycemia. You know, since sugar levels fall too low in hypoglycemia. It's high yield to remember which diabetes drugs cause hypoglycemia and which ones do not. One recurring theme that helps me is to remember that drugs which increase the total amount of insulin, like meglitinides, sulfonylureas, and insulin themselves, can cause hypoglycemia. In contrast, drugs that modulate the sensitivity or response to existing insulin typically do not cause hypoglycemia. I'm talking about incretins and GLP analogs. I like to think that flooding your body with insulin overwhelms any feedback mechanisms your body has in place to prevent hypoglycemia. In contrast, simply changing insulin sensitivity while leaving insulin levels relatively unchanged leaves most of your body's intrinsic feedback mechanisms intact. Again, it's high yield to remember sulfonylureas can cause hypoglycemia because they increase the total amount of insulin released. Next, take a look at the kidney-shaped jelly beans next to the ice cream machine. That's right, we have our ice cream toppings all in one place. And now that I think about it, jelly beans look a lot like kidneys. These kidney-shaped jelly beans can help you remember that sulfonylureas have an increased risk of hypoglycemia in kidney failure. So watch your dosing in dialysis patients. One more thing to add, first-generation sulfonylureas do tend to cause weight gain in patients. I like to remember this as the insulin driving sugar into cells, fattening them up. Yes, I finally won! I never win these carnival games. And it looks like our prize is matching Ram t-shirts, which turns out to be both of our favorite animals. Our matching Ram t-shirts are here to help you remember that sulfonylureas can cause a disulfiram-like reaction. That means when patients are taking sulfonylureas, they can't drink alcohol. This is because sulfonylureas work similarly to disulfiram to inhibit acetaldehyde dehydrogenase. Looks like this first date went great. I wonder what the future holds. Looks like we're coming to a close for this first date. One last thing to note is that first and second generation sulfonylureas are, of course, sulfur-based drugs. Therefore, patients with sulfa allergies may develop a reaction after taking these drugs. But you didn't need a symbol for that one, right? I mean, come on, sulfonylureas literally has sulfur in the name. If you got a sulfur allergy, you should stay away from these drugs, folks. Phew, we're done here. Let's recap quickly to end the date. First-generation sulfonylureas include the drugs tolbutamide and chlorpropamide, and they are used in the management of type 2 diabetes. They work by closing potassium channels on beta cells of the pancreas, which leads to depolarization and an influx of calcium, eventually resulting in insulin release. Since the total amount of insulin is increased, these drugs have a tendency to cause hypoglycemia, which is especially relevant in kidney failure since these drugs are renally cleared. Lastly, first-generation sulfonylureas can also cause a disulfiram-like reaction after consuming alcohol. And that's it for first-generation sulfonylureas. It's been a great date. I'm sure there's more to come. I'll see you next time.